Good morning, good afternoon, good evening all, it's Bear here. And I'd like to welcome you to my YouTube channel, A Box With No Lid. A channel I'm creating not just to bring the awareness around the live reality trauma and complex trauma creates in removal and placement trauma, but I really want to bring forward what I've learned through my own personal experiences and my many years as an advocate and as a practitioner with the simple real world hope, the humble hope that can help make a difference in your lives by bringing the focus back to the real world steps and like filling in some of the gaps in the reality of things, not just catchphrases and fancy little lines, but what it means in the real world to bring the conversation back to its base so that real healing and real positive steps can be made forward. Now, with this in mind, this is the next video in the adoption series, and I want to talk about some of the conversations that are really needed to be had around adoption. We need to have within every adoption circle, within every foster care circle, those that have lived through foster care, the people that are in our lives, we need to learn how to create the layers of conversation to build the understandings we need so that all the misconceptions, all the misunderstandings, and all the truths can come out, to open up pathways so that one, procedurally things can be changed, but also pathways of understanding within families, so that we don't continue to see what unfolds and what I read every day, every time I go into the adoption forums, all the posts and what people put up, and all these things are revolving around conversations that are really needed to be had in many layers and in many circles. Because being an adoptee, like I know from my own experiences, if I wanted to raise anything around my biological family within my adoptive parents, it would never end well, and it didn't end well. Several years ago when the last time the necessity came up, and it came up through trying to get family medical history based. There was a need for documentation for family medical history. I had a carver knife thrust in my face. Now, I understand why. I understand the reasons behind the episodes of aggression towards me. It's been that way my entire childhood. But this is the real world reality that faces so many adoptees. Now, we are put in circumstances where we need to have information about those that gave birth to us so that we can try to find the documents to give us the pieces of paper, to give those in authority what they're asking for. Otherwise, we're left out in the dark. Another component is where, like as we move progressively towards digital ID, most adoptees, especially here in Australia, don't realize that most adoptees, we only have what they call a birth certificate extract. It's no longer counted as a 100-point ID, as an identifying document. And when you hit that wall, once the driver's license and passport isn't enough, which is coming, we're going to need to apply to get our biological information of our biological family and our original birth certificates, pre-adoption information, and so forth, for the requirements for digital ID and to be safe with the world that gets heading towards digital ID, to be able to counter identity theft. But again, there's this conversation that has to be had because the adoptive parents have some of the pieces of the puzzle that we need. If you have a legitimate adoption, they have the Supreme Court documentation, which has the file reference numbers, which lead back to where the original records are. But then we have to have that conversation. We need to find ways to ask. When we ask, more often than not, it ends the relationship with the adoptive parents. Some adoptive parents completely refuse. Some adoptive parents, it just changes the vibe in the room, which just leads to this coldness that grows. And we know that. And we're conditioned to not ask. We're conditioned to sacrifice and not ask until it is absolutely unavoidable, which makes the situation worse. Like I said in the beginning of this video, it's about having conversations so that the normality of dealing with what arises when you raise somebody else's child, which is what you are doing and choosing to do when you adopt or when you take in foster care, a child from foster care long term. That there are obstacles out of our control that need to be accepted. It is only a threat to the relationship you have with the child you raised because you're choosing it to. Most adoptees have chosen to see the adoptive parents as their mother and father. But when these conversations that need to happen change that environment and we are forced to question that, we don't have anywhere to turn to because most often our biological parents have either passed or they're too hard to find or they don't want to be found. So it creates a minefield of difficulty. And as this world progresses from paper ID into digital ID, to where the person you're talking to doesn't make the decision on accepting it, the information they put into a computer does. We need to start having more conversations around the reality of my particular demographic has and the difficulties associated with it. We also need to have conversations around why we can't ask for what we need. Why do we have to risk our place in a family for pieces of paper that we need? Why is it on us to carry the burden to take that leap of faith that 9 times out of 10 blows up in our face? Where it was never our fault, we didn't choose to be removed, we were removed. And this is where the conversations need to start. At the moment, I spent decades advocating with government in Australia, in America, and in Canada, trying to get answers and pathways and get what we go through recognized. Not even a dent in the door in the reality of what needs to be talked about and what needs to be accepted and understood. There is so much focus on liability that you don't even get your foot in the door. You get some faint acknowledgements, but it never leads anywhere. So we need to have the conversations within our own houses, within our own homes, and with our own families. We need to start doing it from the ground up. And the conversations need to be real, not marketed, not one side protecting the other. They need to be emotionally real about what adoption and foster care and all the issues around it really are. Once and for all, it needs to be a real conversation, so that finally we can start to make the inroads to create the procedures and pathways we all need. Adoptees, foster kids, foster parents and adoptive parents, biological family and biological parents. All of us need to have these conversations recognized. And all of us need to have a hell of a lot more understanding in the procedural aspect of how to solve the many, many layers of issues that arise. And the many, many obstacles that will hit all of us at some point. I really hope you guys understand this and value the need for the conversations we need to have. To be able to start the road to these conversations, we need to understand, one, when we're adopted or foster cared, how we made emotional sense of what happened to us, of why we are not raised by our biological family, our mom and dad in a biological sense. And the process to that understanding we need to also remember and recognize, because we need to understand the same process in the family that raised us. Like as I said in the beginning of this video, when I raised it and the knife to the face thing, I understand why. It wasn't, I'm going to choose to stab you. It was whatever was in reach, which was my childhood. Whatever was in reach came at me at 1,000 miles an hour. Because my adopted parents, Dutch and English, were raised, they're from World War II. Adopted mothers from Dutch apartheid in the Dutch West Indies. And there's all these other precursors and their experiences and generational trauma that created certain mindsets. and certain belief systems. And then because I didn't emotionally meet her or their requirements when they first picked me up, it's created an ecology. And because there was no conversations, there was no ability or realization on my part, the necessity of the conversations until I got much older. It is the way that it is. And what I hope from this video is that those that haven't gone down that far path where of dysfunctionality, like now for me it's impossible because of dementia and the age and the circumstances around it. There is no way to have conversations. It's too far gone, as I said, primarily because of stroke and dementia for my elderly adopted parents. But for others, you don't have that. Start the conversations now. Start finding the avenues and learn the emotional languages to be able to have the necessary conversations. Those who are not from adoption or foster care that watch this video, start talking about it amongst your social groups. Start raising and thinking about some of the obstacles that we face. Increase the awareness and understanding, because in the world today, so many children are going to be removed and placed in the system. Our societies are so dysfunctional, and with cost of living and all the stresses that we're experiencing now, so many are going to end up in the system. And the system is more broken now than it's ever been. So this is not just for people that are dealing with adoption and foster care. This is for everyone. The system is broken. The current way we do things does not work. And the only way to change it is to have the layers of conversations needed so that enough people realize and real solutions are found. I really hope you guys get where I'm coming from with this, and I really hope it is valued. I love you guys' comments and feedback. Please be mindful, please be safe, and I'll see you all next time.